Welcome to the Be a Paid Speaker Now podcast. I'm Deborah Deras, your host and top Latina peak performance speaker. Each week, you will learn from top experts in the speaking industry, insider secrets of what works and what doesn't, so that you can monetize your expertise. My intention is to be your speaking coach, to provide you with resources and experts that have done it before you so that you can get your message out into the world faster and easier. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to another episode of the Be a Paid Speaker Now podcast. This is Deborah Deras, Peak Performance Latina speaker, and your host, bringing you another incredible guest. I was thinking that, wow, if I had all of these resources when I first started speaking, and if I were able to get them for free, I would be listening to this podcast over and over and over and over. And I would be sharing it. I would be sending it to my friends that want to be paid speakers. But I have to tell you, I didn't have that. I had to pay big bucks, like about $40,000 for all of the speaking training, for all of the coaching, for all the consulting. And now with the wonderful digital age, you have it for free. And sometimes when we get things for free, we don't use them. So my invitation for this podcast today is that you take notes. If you're driving, don't take notes, take a mental note. But you definitely want to use the information that's presented so that you're going to be able to get the most out of it. Because today, like every episode, I have an amazing guest. And it's not just a guest, it's my hermanito. It's my friend. It's one of the people that when I am out and traveling, especially in Miami, I'm so excited and happy to see. And you're going to be happy to hear because today I have Mr. George Torres. He is an award-winning bilingual social media cultural consultant who in the late 90s captured attention on the internet. Wow, friends. With his personal mission statement of connecting Latinos to their culture and raising the bar of Latino excellence. And that's just a snippet of what he does. I'm going to let him tell you more about himself. Please help me welcome Mr. George Torres.
Wepa, I love it. I love it.
Wepa, yes.
Your energy this early in the morning is a breath of fresh air. Thank you. Thank you for
Oh,
having me.
really? I'm low energy today. I only had 3 hours sleep. Okay, good. I'm glad you feel it.
Your low energy is most people's peak. So
That's good. Okay, good. I'm probably right at the right level base then. Yeah. So I know this is a very modest intro because I know we only had 40 words, but I want people to know like the depth of who you are before we start talking about speaking and how you get to fly all over the country because you're so sought after. Tell them, who is George Torres? And who is the dog
wow.
barking on our podcast? No, I'm just kidding. Silence, dog. No, I'm just kidding. Quiet on the set.
Yo soy el hijo de Carmen y el nieto de Gloria. So yeah. So it's a blessing to be here. I started. I guess my claim to fame is I started the first Hispanic website on the internet 21 years ago.
Wow.
The website called Sofrito for Your Soul. And I've managed to leverage this online experience to be more than just that, to be something where people can connect in real life, and some forms of activism could emanate from. In addition to that, after over 10 years of doing it, I decided to start lending my credibility and expertise to other companies. And small businesses looking to achieve similar results and be able to do some of the things I've been able to do with little to no budget.
Wow.
So that's kind of what it is.
So now not only are you a speaker, but you're a consultant, right? Companies
Correct.
hire you to, what problem do you solve, just in case anybody's listening, to companies?
I help people amplify themselves in their most truest and authentic self. That's culturally relevant. I think that's probably what I could say in a nutshell. Mm-hmm. But I do provide a very large range of services. And speaking actually did not come from this business. It came way before.
Ooh, Ooh, we're going to get into that. So would you consider yourself an influencer or a consultant to how to book
You know,
influencers or
oh, wow. So I play on both sides of the fence. Um, as a Latino webmaster slash blogger, I've experienced a lot of different gigs on the influencer side. I don't like the words influencer and guru and all those different terms that people normally introduce me with. I just like to think of myself as a creator, and I really don't have any bounds. So I could easily, uh, be creating stuff that's socially cool, but I also could be creating stuff that's socially impactful, which is where I kind of am today. I'm kind of more on the impact side today, whereas 5 years ago, I was running through the conferences, picking up awards, and doing the whole
uh,
influencer cool thing. So I
uh,
kind of want to I kind of realize that my shelf life as an influencer is winding down to a certain extent uh, in the influencer space, but as the influencer to the influencers, it's just getting started. If that makes sense.
interesting. And why do you say it's winding down?
Because like everything, there's you got to remember, I started the blog when I was 25 years old as an
Oh,
undergrad,
wow.
and at that time there were no Latino bloggers. There was no such thing as blogging. Like we would call it journaling, and it was this different space. There was nobody there. So you fast forward, 12, 15 years later, and then there's a Hispanicize where 5,000 influencers get together under one
Right.
roof. It kind of gives you I've been called everything from abuelito to ground zero, like all these different nicknames to kind of uh, illustrate how early I was in the game
So you
of
were before
getting attention on
Perez
the internet.
Hilton, right?
I was actually, and I started just getting really popular when he set off his blog in the 2000s. I had
Wow.
just gotten, I had just reached like 1 million followers on migente.com when Perez was getting started. Um, so a lot of people don't know this, but the true story of the internet and social media is that Latinos and people of color have actually predated the earliest forms of social media uh, that we know of, which is Friendster and MySpace, by 5 years. So
Interesting.
take that into account. 3.5 million Latinos online 5 years before MySpace even existed.
Because of our over indexing on every platform, right?
Absolutely, because we're just super curious that way, and we seek out family.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So, okay. So, one of the questions I'm going to add before the end of the podcast is about how speakers can use social media to connect with speaking engagements, because I think you're one of the best people to talk about that. But let's start from the beginning. So, you said that the speaking predated everything. Tell
Yes,
me how your speaking career evolved, because I've heard you speak many, many times.
yes. My superhero story, so to speak, happened in December 26, 1986. And I was coming home from a birthday party with one of my best friends who's Dominican, and we were walking through a place in Queens called Ozone Park, and we were attacked by a group of white men who didn't think that we belonged in their neighborhood, and we almost lost our lives. But where serendipity and history takes an interesting turn is that it happened 15 minutes apart from another racial attack that actually captured national news because the African American that was attacked in that particular incident actually passed away. He was killed. His name was Michael Griffith. So this was known as the Howard Beach incident in New York. So we were the Latino Howard Beach incident. And unfortunately for us, there were no casualties, but we kind of got lumped up in the whole media circus that was racial tension in New York at the time. Um, as luck would have it, I would link up with Reverend Al Sharpton, and he was actually leading the charge on our case. But then I got a visit from somebody who changed my life completely. I got a visit from a man named Richie Perez, who was one of the founders of the Young Lords here in New York, the Young Lords Party. And he was trying to explain to us that even though we were getting a lot of media attention, that the Latino story wasn't being told. So
Oh,
he asked to step in with his legal team and separate us from the original case so that we can address the issues that Latinos were facing as far as racism and uh, segregation in our community. As a result of that, I ended up getting mentoring by some of the biggest civil rights leaders of our time as Latinos,
Wow.
and end up doing college talks at the age of 15 to talk
15?
about my experience. I was
Whoa.
15 at the time.
Whoa.
So from 15 to 17, I was speaking at colleges. I was in the New York Times. I was, getting a lot of media about what happened to us, specifically in the Latino community.
Mm-hmm.
So I got exposed to that life very young. At the same time, I'm being taught what's happening in post civil rights movement in the 1980s as far as self determination and where we need to be as a community by some of, like I said, some of the most prominent Latino leaders like um, uh, Richie Perez, Pablo Guzman, um, Felipe Luciano, Olga Toro. So I'm like, it's amazing the kind of mentoring I got from these individuals that actually was the genesis of even the idea of having a SoFridaForYourSoul.com.
Wow. And that's one of the things that I talk about. The Be a Paid Speaker Now podcast is also an academy. And one of the classes or the modules in my academy is about clarity on your niche. And I say that clarity is cash. So, what it sounds to me is that your niche discovered you. It's just a natural part of who you were, as passionate about sharing your culture and the importance of
Yeah.
the issues affecting your culture. It was just kind of in your DNA, probably when you came out of the womb in preschool, talking to people about, you know?
Well, yeah. So before the Howard Beach incident, I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, Gloria del
Uh,
Rio, que
uh,
en paz descanse. She just passed away in July of 2016.
oh, I'm sorry.
But I used to spend a lot of time with her, and she was an advocate for the elderly in our community, and
Uh-huh.
she was one of the founders of the Meals on Wheels program in Brooklyn.
Oh my
And when I spent time with her, I learned very early on, like just the art of compassion,
God. Mm-hmm.
empathy, and self awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that whenever I go and speak anywhere, no matter what the topic is, no matter what, I come from a place of that first. Is like, how is this going to help the people, the participants in this audience? What message do they need to hear? And what will change everything for them? So I really, I always, I prepare notes for every speech, but I'll be honest with you, if you ever see me speak before, understand that none of that's prepared. Like I write notes because it's part of preparation, and I always felt like I had to be prepared.
Right.
But when I actually walk in the room, the spirit of the room takes over for me, and it becomes something else.
I do that too. And I used to spend hours and like too many hours, like writing, rewriting, writing, rewriting. And then I get in the room and I feel a vibe and I just speak from the heart and say something completely different. I did that last night. I'm like, oh gosh.
Yeah, well, you know what it is. What it is
But
when you walk in the room and you prepare your notes, you're preparing a message that you think people need to hear based on who you think they are. But when you actually walk in the room and you see them face to face, you start speaking your truth, and you start speaking your truth in the context of how they need to hear it. So
exactly.
it's a completely different animal for me. So I do the notes and I do the preparation because I'm trained to do that, and you just kind of want to be fresh on what some of the bullet points are. But when I tell you that 95% of what I say on stage normally doesn't come from the notes. The notes are just there, and I usually leave them behind. And I've had people mail them back to me, and I've heard people say, "Can I get a copy of them?" It's kind of funny.
And that's the difference between a speaker and an orator. I know you do spoken word events and things like that because you're not saying the words, you're vibing with the emotion from your soul. And that's what moves, impacts, like you said, your word and transforms an audience. Because even though this podcast is called Be a Paid Speaker, it can equally be called Be a Purposeful Speaker because the
Yep.
my intention anyway, is to transform my audience, not to motivate them, not to inspire them, but that they're different than when they came. And that can only come when you're vulnerable and naked with your soul, like our friend Pegeen taught me, Pegeen, just to
Yo, Peking.
vulnerable. To be vulnerable. Yeah, Pegeen is my motivational speaking mentor. And I remember when I first met George, it was because Pegeen was like, "You need George in your life, friend." She's like, "He's the one that you need to know at this Hispanicized conference." And so I was like so excited to meet you that one year. Yeah, she's like,
Listen, I almost got. I'm gonna tell a story I never told before. I almost got ousted as the Alianza Latina president at my college because I spent so much money on Beijing, and even the money that I spent on Beijing wasn't even a drop of what she was supposed to be getting.
uh-huh. Oh,
But I, people were wondering why I had this woman coming or whatever, and when they saw her, and after the event, I got. It was basically my rise to stardom in the collegiate community because they were so inspired by what Beijing had to bring to the table. It was during the time that Latina magazine was just launching. I mean, it was just an amazing time for Latinos in general. There was so much popping up for us in the media, and yeah, so I almost lost my whole. Like if she didn't come through in the clutch, I would have
oh
been
wow. You knew
uh
she comes through.
my
She comes
like,
through every single time, 1,000,000%.
but
So
I didn't really know her. I knew
oh,
somebody over at Latina magazine, and they
oh,
told me that she was a speaker that was available. I was trying to get actually one of the magazine contributors to come because that's who I thought I could afford. And they presented me with the option of begging, and we went back and forth on the money, and the money really wasn't there, and I got creative. So
oh.
we went ahead and we went to every department. We went to the English department. We went to the social studies department. We pretty much like nickel and dimed our way to getting Biggie on stage there, and it was like one of the most amazing moments for me. And it's even more amazing that it's like 22 years later and we're still friends.
Wow. And that's a really important point because you're so insightful for everyone listening because you know the front end and the back end and probably a couple of the side ends as well, right? So
Yeah.
how so I want to know two questions. How do you secure paid engagements and how would you recommend speakers that may have trouble going in the front door or go in the back door?
Okay. The first part of the question is I never think about money. And I
Good.
know that's very
Wow.
controversial.
No,
It's
that's
very,
perfect.
very controversial. I follow the doctrine of people like Gary Vee that actually go out in the community and just put out tons of free content all the time. And I really let the people who actually reach out to me decide what they think I'm worth. And I know that's, like I said, it's
Oh
controversial
wow.
because you have to go out there. But once you make the engagement, that's when you really kind of have clarifying moments. I wasn't always good at this. I did a lot of $500 gigs for a long time. But I also have a rule. So, for example, if you're approaching me about a youth event,
Mhm.
my rule of thumb is I will do what I always do, and I'll tell you what I think I'm worth for that event based on what your impact, what the impact you want to what the outcome is, right? And I will give you that number. And if you tell me that you don't have the money to pay me for that, then I will find a way to make it happen. I never let money come between me and young people.
So you'll find a way of
Corp,
getting a sponsor.
I will make it happen. I usually tap into some of my sponsors. I have some really amazing people who have helped me throughout my career, like Hispanicize, for example. We'll find something somewhere. And if it's local in my community here in New York, I literally do about two high schools or junior or intermediate schools a week during my regular schedule. Like I stop in schools all the time and speak to kids at no cost. So so securing paid gigs is really about when you're an influencer, when you're really good or people perceive you to be good at what you do and you're sought after, like you said, people would dream up projects for you. Um, they dream up projects for you. I have a beer company that just reached out to me. Now I'm not really big on beer in general. I like having a good time, and I've been at some really crazy social media type events and everything. But one particular brand reached out to me because they have a campaign going on right now that talks about your fighting spirit. It talks about like what adversity have you overcome, and I really resonated with it. I happen to like the beer, so it was a marriage made in heaven. So we are actually going to be launching some of that content over the holidays this year. But they dreamed up the project for me. They didn't. I didn't go to them and say, "Hey, you have a great beer, and I'd love to talk about all the hardship I had in my life." They came to me and they said, "Listen, this is how we're positioning it." And it's not positioned in a way to promote the beer so much as it is to tell a story. And that's what's huge for me.
Yeah.
It's like what the impact is, what your audience is, what do you want them to walk away with. I turned down a lot of different companies, not just alcohol companies, because the messaging wasn't right and because it didn't fit who I am.
So everybody
So
write that down. So what I'm the professor reviewing the notes. You said, what is the impact that you want to have on the audience? And then you said, what is the story? Is number two?
yeah, what is the story you want to tell? Like, and I have to see if it aligns with what I want to say. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like that's really huge. Like, what do I want to say? What do I want to talk about this holiday season? My grandmother just passed away, and adversity and hardship are things that are resonate with me because of what we went through as a family, as of what I went through alone with her guidance and everything. So, this was a story I was going to tell anyway, and now I'm just doing it with a partner that can get me a lot more impact in terms of audience. Like we can reach out to more people now, and I could tell the story to a lot more people with this brand as a partner. So it's really important for me to have the right partners in place.
And
So
so,
secured. To answer the question just in a nutshell, I secured paid speaking gigs by just being omnipresent in the community and allowing others to see me and figure out how I fit into the scheme of what they're doing.
and you are omnipresent. Obviously, you can't be everywhere all the time, although you certainly try. I've seen you in New York and Miami and LA within a few hours. But um, how are you being omnipresent? Is it through social media? Is it through public relations? I know you're like social media, maven. How do you stay at the top of the mind of people that could potentially sponsor you, brand people?
It's all relationship building. A lot of it's behind the scenes. It's doing what I did last night. A really good friend of mine from LA, that's a mutual friend of ours, Liza, was in town. Uh, you know, hey, you have a ride to the airport. Can we get coffee? Well, I know you're coming to town, and I know you love poetry. Let me take you to an open mic.
Uh,
It's being like the ambassador to New York when people come to New York, and just showing them around. Not having any kind of business goal in mind, not having any type of angle. Just being present with them, checking in with them when I see that their social media is off. I have friends who post on Instagram every day, and somebody doesn't post one day, or they post something a little darker than usual. I'm in the DM like, hey, what's going on with you? Like, are you okay? Can I help? What can I do? So it's a lot more than just being on your timelines. It's actually being present as a friend. Now everybody's not a friend, granted, but there
mhm.
are some special, there's people who you see all the time, like you and I. We see each other at conferences all over the country, and there's a special affection that we have. And we don't talk every day, but you know that if you had something going on, you have a space on my website and my timeline where I can help promote you. And it's those relationships and just keeping them in context and keeping them present and keeping those people close to you and always give, 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 and again, karma will take care of the rest.
Ooh, I love it. You're so sweet. No wonder I love you so much. And I mean, and it's just the energy that you come from too. It's so sincere and it's so authentic, and you're so compassionate and truly caring. And I know when you're like that, sometimes people can want to take advantage. When I say people, I mean organizations. I mean, have you
Yeah,
ever had people, I mean, I know when I first started, especially with working with Latino organizations, just over and over, oh, do it for the community, do it for the culture. And I wanted to do everything for the community and culture, but it came to a point when speaking was my full time gig that if I wasn't charging and I was doing everything for the community pro bono, I wouldn't have I wouldn't be able to pay the mortgage. So
yep.
how do
No,
you handle that with wanting to work? Like if they have a great cause and a great impact and, or you're just always able to get a sponsor. I mean, do you ever have to say no?
I say no a lot, and I say
Okay,
no,
good.
no to a lot, and it hurts sometimes because sometimes the cause is really great, but I also know that when it comes to social media influencers and speakers, a lot of people, a lot of companies, organizations, nonprofits, they are. It's really weird when it comes time to talk about how they accomplished something. They'll talk about, hey, we got this great grant for $10 million, and we're able to do blah blah blah. And then they turn around and they have this event, and then all of a sudden there's no budget for you. But they have a celebrity photographer, but they have the best caterer, but they spend money on an incredible venue. And I am very good at telling people respect me the way you respect them, especially if I'm the one that's going to deliver the message. And
Right.
that to me is pivotal. Again, community organizations that are around the corner from my house, I'm
Right.
not really too worried about, because at the end of the day, uh, you know, they're not going to be able to, even if they did have some money, they're not able. But what I could do is, for example, if a school reaches out to me and they want me to do their career day, or a series of career days, or a STEM project or something in tech, I'll say I'll do it. But since you can't pay me, can we do something? Can I have can I host an event here, or can I use space? Try to negotiate something else that they have as an asset. If they have PR, I don't use. So you mentioned something before about public relations. How do you say I'm the president? I do zero public relations. If you see any press releases out there in the world with my name on it, it's because the brand paid for it. I
Wow.
don't do PR,
I
and
didn't
I
think you.
want to. And it's
Uh-huh.
not that I don't want to. I want to, and I'm going to get there eventually. I'm going to start doing it. But I never have. Everything with me is word of mouth. Actually, I don't even really pitch. I don't really cold pitch companies at all. Like very rarely. I could tell you like maybe 5 times in the last 3 years that I cold pitched a company, and one of them was Perielas when they bought Cubavera. When I got my Guayaberas that year Hispanicized. That was
Mm,
one of the few cold pitches I did, and it was only a cold pitch because the small business I was working with actually went out of business. They weren't able to financially sustain the program, and I was like, I'm already in this space where people are looking. They're looking to find out what I'm wearing. So I reached out to Perielas because they bought Cubavera, which is actually one of my favorite shirt companies, and I said, hey, you want in, and they were all for it. And I worked with them for 2 years before going back to another small business that's based in Miami, Yabera.com is who I work with now.
ah. And that's why you
But
look so stylish all the time. I was like, what is going on?
yeah, but like Perry Ellis is a great brand, and it's a national and a global brand or whatever. But I want to help a Latino. Like, I don't care if the money's less. I want to help somebody. I want to be part of somebody's success story. So I opted to opt out of Perry Ellis for the third year and go to a local brand in Miami, owned by
Excuse me. You have
Joseph
choices.
Genovese.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes when you work hard and you build your career and you design your life the way you want, it gives you freedom to do what you want. Think about filmmakers. How many filmmakers have you known who made movies that they know that very few people are going to see, but they needed to accomplish that. They needed to do it. They're not
Right.
doing it for the money or for the ticket sales. They're doing it for the art and to be part of history. And I
Hmm.
think that's where I kind of fit in. I think that even though we're talking tech and even though we're talking about events that are quick flashes in the pan sometimes, I really want to think about what my legacy is in terms of how I impact people and how people are going to remember me, and what I did for them in their life.
I love that. Remember, friends, what he's saying. He's talking about if you want to stay at the top of mind, be omnipresent, share your best content, be a giver, 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 cultivate your relationships by really being attentive to people and knowing what they need before they ask for it, and you will be repaid through karma. So I love that. And I just want to add with the pro bono gigs, like I did something this week for a local, very local Latina association, and I was happy to do it at no cost because it was like for emerging Latina entrepreneurs, which is one of my biggest gifts. And I did it from the heart. And if I'm getting paid big bucks or if I'm getting paid zero, I give the same. I give the same drop the mic speech. And I just really gave it that night because I wasn't feeling good. So it was overcompensating my flu and dizziness. And it was like there was like vice presidents of banks in that room that were like, "Oh, we need to bring you for programs." So when he talks about
Yeah,
karma, it is real and it is always happening. So you are
I have a
constantly as a speaker planting seeds and
yes.
and I don't like to use the F word free. So if I do something, I'll say pro bono and I'll, give an invoice and deduct my fee so that my CPA knows, this is tax deductible donation. But it is definitely an opportunity to showcase, because the best way speakers can get booked for paid gigs is by people in an audience being able to advocate and sell you for fee gigs. Go ahead.
I'll give you a perfect example. I did a free career day for pro bono career day for a local school in Brooklyn, and a woman that I know who we were undergraduates at the same time, and she belonged to a Latina sorority, Chi Upsilon Sigma. She saw me in the audience, from the audience, and we chatted a little bit afterwards. Turns out that one of my fraternity brothers is her uncle. One of her other sisters works for City Hall, so she's seen me at the City Hall events here in New York. And next thing you know, I got an invite, and this was huge. I got an invite to be a keynote speaker at their biannual conference. This is a Latina woman conference, and this is 2015.
Oh, wow, Fred.
Think about that. I want you to think about the magnitude. And I I had the question the whole time, like, why me? And I didn't ask it till after the gig was over and I got the check. But but I asked why me, and it was because they said, like, they struggled to find a man that actually supported women in the way that I do.
Oh, it's true. It's true.
And I thought it was huge because they only get to meet every 2 years, and they selected a man to actually lead that conversation that year, and that was huge for me. I mean, that was like one of the biggest compliments I've ever gotten as a speaker, as an influencer, as a anything. Is the fact that they would trust me with that conversation, and they would be so enamored with the conversation, the relationship between me and my grandmother, and how that's developed me as a man, and how it shapes my agenda when I'm out in the community and I'm supporting women in various events. So so sometimes, like, you never know. Like, you're planting seeds, like you said. You're in places, you're being seen, you're always being watched, in some way, shape, or form. People are watching you because they like you. People are watching you because they don't like you. It's people are always looking to either include you or exclude you from the equation. So your best bet is just to show up as the best you, and let the chips fall where they may.
It's so true. And so in the beginning, I know you said you were charging 500. I know in the beginning I was charging nothing. But then went up to like 250 to and on and on and on. But how did you know, like you said, you just know what you were worth. But for those people that are new in the speaking industry and don't know, like they've never, like, especially because there's a difference between nonprofit, there's a difference between college, and there's a difference between corporate. Do you have like different fees for different markets, and how do you know what's the right fee for you?
I use instinct mostly.
Mm.
Again, I look at audience size. I think it's a trick that I learned from the poetry scene. I run a very
Oh,
popular. I co-founded a popular poetry collective in New York that actually is the next generation of the New Yorican poets, and
nice.
we have a school attached to it and everything. But in the poetry world, for example, if I was booking La Bruja, who I used to book back in the college days, or if I'm booking Lemon Anderson or Flaco Navaja, these prominent poets, the first question that's going to come up is how many people are going to be there, because there's that's how you know what the range is. Because if you go to the average poetry event, tickets range from $10 to $20, right? And
Hmm.
so you have to figure out, like, what the budget is, what the space allows for, and whatever. So you kind of have an idea of what kind of space you're playing in.
Right.
Um, if it's something like a ERG that's asking me to come in and do like workshop work, and kind of like empower their people, I take into account the fact that it's not just me sharing a story; it's now me giving them actionables, and they're gonna have to, like, show up to actually implement some of what I'm teaching them, and there's gonna be an outcome at the end. Um, so I don't have the answer, but I know this is probably the whole purpose of the podcast. I don't have an answer in terms of giving you a concrete, like, formula, and I'm discovering it, and as soon as I discover it in its entirety, I promise I'll share it with you, so you could include it in your academy. I think Beijing is probably a better person to give you that kind of formula. But I will tell you. it doesn't hurt to mystery shop people who are in your space. Like go to speaker bureaus and say, hey, this person is kind of like me. This person talks about the things I talk about. They're my direct competition, and ask to book them for an event and get a quote and see how the quotes are structured.
I did that when I first started. I did that. I was doing like a diversity career expo, and we actually were considering speakers. And our whole event budget was 10,000 for the entire event that I was doing. And I remember calling up the speakers bureau, and they're like, "Yeah, she's 5,000 for 45 minutes." We were like, "What?" We were all me and my boss looked at each other. We're like, "We're in the wrong business."
Yeah.
And then we both quit our jobs at the government and went to start our own businesses. We're like, "Okay."
Yeah, we desperately need a Latino or Latina speaker bureau that really represents us and our best interests and that has the relationships. I've been asked many times by people who I booked because I have friends, like somebody reaches out to me and says, "Hey, you want Deborah Deras or whatever." Like I sometimes make those connections and sometimes I will get a fee from the agency or whatever. But we need something like that, and I think that 5 years ago I would have been perfectly positioned to start one. However, life has changed, and now with Puerto Rico being in the state that it's in, my focus is kind of on the philanthropy side, and I'm kind of not looking to build businesses right now as I am trying to build impact.
That I love that. So, yeah, I mean, I appreciate that you want to have that and you're putting that intention in the world. And let's just put it out there into the universe and knowing that the right person will come along. I own the domain name Latina Speaker, Latina Speakers, Latina Motivational Speakers. So whoever wants them can come get them because it's definitely needed. And there was one, and I had an agent was booked for some really great events through it, but then they decided not to do it anymore because there's so many great speakers that I'm meeting through this podcast, but they need to have a platform. So definitely having a good bureau. I interviewed someone on the podcast that has a speakers bureau dedicated to mindfulness speakers. So that was really cool. I was like, wow, it's a cool niche. So let's talk about some of the challenges. Life and living on the road and living out of a suitcase is not easy. Sleeping at strange hotels is not easy. What are some of the hard lessons that you learned on the road, and how can speakers make their life easier when they're traveling nonstop?
Well, first of all, you're talking to somebody who absolutely loves that. So the hardships you talk about don't exist in my world. I absolutely love being in different places, different days, talking to new people all the time, taking stories with me. So I'm completely not the right person to ask that particular question. But I guess a couple of things, just like from a business perspective, is always sharing your story and your journey. When we talk about social media, you asked about social media marketing practices. People kind of want to see where you're going and what you're doing. So sharing the journey, sharing little pieces of the story as you go along, as you get to your destination, builds excitement for whatever you're going to do. And it makes people want to see you. It makes people want to come out to you. I do something very special that I've been doing for the last 6, 7 years, ever since I've been involved with Hispanicize, actually, where I'll announce where I'm going, what cities I'm going to, and I'll literally go to people's houses and have coffee with them. I will go out and have their city's dish. I'll go to Philly and have a cheesesteak sandwich with somebody. I'll show up at an event unannounced or announced, but like the organizers know I'm showing up, and I'll come and do something. I went to a Puerto Rican Day parade one year in Philly and jumped on a float, and so like I'll just do crazy stuff like that to kind of like add to the whole urban Hibalo story. And it really, again, it just builds amazing relationships. I have friends in every corner of this country. I have friends that like they say like you can stay with me. And I normally don't, but like that's the level of camaraderie that we engage in when you know. So for me, it's like just make the use of that moment. Don't think of travel as like something that's overwhelming and daunting. Embrace it and find out how you could better connect. I'll
And
tell you
you
right
don't get
now,
tired, you don't get jet lag, none of that.
I do, but I love it. Like
Oh,
I really do. For people who are following me now,
Right.
they'll know. I just gave up my apartment. I've been in my apartment for 4 years in Brooklyn. I had a beautiful luxury apartment,
You're in
gorgeous
the
place.
Bronx
I
now, right?
gave it up. I gave it up. I gave it up for like a real hood apartment in the Bronx.
Ah,
Um, like it's in a community that I lived in the past, and I love it. So I went there, and it's not anything like the gentrified area that I've been living in for the last 4 years. And I did so that I could bring my cost of living down,
right.
so that I could be more fluid and and go other places and maybe live in a place for a month or two and then come back and whatever. But the goal is to go to Puerto Rico and work there full time on the philanthropy projects that I'm working on right now. Um, so I'm really kind of like inching in that direction. But I've actually played with the idea of not having an apartment at all and just being on the road 24/7. And I
Oh,
think that I want to do that at some point. There's also a cruise that goes away for 4 months and sees
okay.
about 39 places in the world.
Oh
So
my
I'm kind
God.
of playing around with this whole thing of just disappearing for a little while and then coming back with an amazing story, an amazing book or something.
Yeah, it's all attitude and perspective. I had a speaking gig on Princess Cruises, and I lasted like 3 weeks. I was off that ship, so won't go into details about that. But yeah, so I mean, is there any other lessons like besides travel? Like, what is a lesson you've learned as a speaker that you said, "Oh, I wish somebody would have told me this about speaking"?
You know, follow up is really important, and never assume that the organizers have it together. Be
So
very
true.
clear be very clear on what you're walking into when you get there, what the preparation is, what the mic check or the sound check time is. Look at to run a show, find out if it fits. You know, if they're giving you enough time for you to do what you want to do, if you're gonna have Q&A or not, if you're gonna be able to sell product. I don't have books right now. I'm actually in the process of writing my book, but but you know, you want to find out all those little intricate details, and you also want to find out what kind of media they're investing in you. Like, yeah, okay, especially if they're not paying you. Like, what is their, like, you know, investment in this program? Are they going to go out and put out a press release? Are they going to have a press junket? If they're going to have media there to interview you while the time that you're there? Because that's all things that you can negotiate, or those are all things that you should consider when the cost of having you there is not optimal. You know, it's like,
Exactly.
what am I going to get out of this? Am I going to get some exposure? Is BET going to be there? Is, you know, Univision going to be there? Am I going to get to talk to somebody that has a bigger platform than I do? So, you know, you want to take all those things into account. So, um, I would actually commit to this. I'll tell you what. January 1st, I will give you a checklist of what to ask organizers. That's my gift
Okay.
to you.
All right.
So I'll give
Thank
you.
you.
I will put together a checklist of what you should ask organizers when booking a speaking engagement. That way, you have some kind of template, and you could edit it and add your own thing based on what you do. But I'll give you somewhere to start from, and that'll be my gift to all your listeners for having
Ooh.
me here.
Thank you, George. Wow. See, he's such a giver. He is a giver. That is so awesome. Yeah. For me, the best thing that I could get from a conference is videotape of my speaking so that I'm able to use that in my sizzle reel. So you mentioned about your projects that you're really committed to in Puerto Rico. Do you want to just
Yes.
let us know a little bit about that so that we can support you in any way?
Oh my God, yes. That would be amazing. That would be optimal. So, as many of you know, last year, Puerto Rico was impacted by a series of storms that compounded a financial storm politically that they were dealing with already. And Puerto Rico has found themselves in a third world country status as a result, with this government not really actively supporting and engaging the community in what they really need. So I have joined a bunch of do-gooders that are part of my community, part of my tribe by default. And we've all been working on different initiatives to kind of change what's happening in Puerto Rico. Um, there was first the emergency assistance part of it, where it was like we had to get out there with food and water and get electric plants up and running and things of that nature. But I've since moved into a more long-term piece of the island. So my dream is to move to the island, and in the process of all the stuff that we were doing, one of my really good friends and fraternity brother started an organization that does capacity building and policy change in Latin America. And he went to the island right away, and he called me up and engaged me and said, "Hey, What can we do? Who do you know? Let's get our hands dirty. So as a result of that, we got a call from somebody who opted to give us 15 acres of land so we can create a sustainable farm project. So what that means is that for those of you who know what Hibaro is, I'm known as the urban Hibaro. They're actually trying to make me a real Hibaro. They're trying to get me to to build this
Wow.
farm. So the
Whoa.
good news is, and I have a bunch of good news coming this week, but in a nutshell, we've partnered with St. John's University on solar power and Rutgers University on water and solar. And we have some good partnerships coming up. It may be a year or two before this farm is fully up and operational the way we need it to be. But in the meantime, we've been financing a smaller farm in Orocovis with a woman named Dalma Cartagena, and we've been helping her capacity build, start a foundation, a nonprofit foundation, and actually expand her farm from 1 acre to 3 acres with some community help, so that we could figure out a model that we could use for the 15 acres, if that makes sense.
Wow. That is
So
so awesome. Are
for
you
those
working
people
with
who are
Macy's at
listening,
all?
who?
Macy's?
No, no, no. This is
I'm just
completely nonprofit, and we are actually even our travel is funded out of our own personal pockets. Like we
no,
don't
I
take
was
any
just
money
wondering.
from.
Oh, you don't take money because okay.
We don't. No, no. We accept donations. But what I'm saying is that the people who, like myself and Lewis, who are running the charge on this, we don't actually use the money donated to travel to Puerto Rico.
Right,
Like
right,
we
right.
do it all out of pocket. So we take no money whatsoever from that. Everything goes into the community. Everything goes into the people and the capacity building that we're doing on the island.
Got it. That's so wonderful. So, how can people support you or follow you or stay connected with everything that you're doing? And you can also learn by watching. Success leaves clues. So, one of the things George said at the very beginning is he's omnipresent, and he truly is. I felt like I was at his Fantasize just watching your Instagram stories. I
I
was
love
there.
Instagram
I was
stories.
there. I didn't have to leave LA at all. So, how can people stay in touch with you?
People can stay in touch with me. It's Urban Hibaro. It's URBANJIB as in boy ARO on all platforms. If you go to my link in bio on Instagram, it has a list of all the projects that I'm currently working on and how you can support. So if you go to my Instagram page now, you can figure out how to support Nuestro Ideal, which is the organization that's running the farm project in the island. Um, I do support a lot of other organizations. And just to your point, when you follow people, when you follow people and you start consuming their content and you like their vibe and you see some similarities or you see some things that you'd like to take away from that, it's okay to reverse engineer and figure out like where do I want to be and how do I have to work backwards using George as a model or using Deborah as a model of how to get there and definitely reach out and ask questions. I'm super generous on Instagram stories. If you engage with me on Instagram stories, if you ask me questions about social media or anything, for the most part, I will actually answer you personally with a video. Most likely, depending on how I feel that day, if I went to the barber and got my beard trimmed. But I'll actually respond to you and give you resources. My rule of thumb is that my consulting work, which is a big part of my business, is very important to me. But if there's something that I could answer off the top of my head without doing research, without pulling out archives and whatever, like that's free. I'm gonna do that for free all day, every day. You know what I mean? It's when I have to actually go and do some work and kind of like take away from whatever it is else I'm doing that I have to consider actually charging a fee. But if you call me up and you say, hey, by the way, what do you think about Twitter and what can I do, blah, 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 then, I'll give you my tips based on what you're telling me. But now if you're telling me to audit your account, then that will be something that I would charge a fee for. Because then there will be
Love.
more intentional, there'll be more intentional feedback. There'll be specific criteria that would need to be met. And I would also give you anywhere between 3 and 10 things that you could do immediately to change your presence almost automatically on Twitter. Or just Twitter, just to make an example, but on any platform. But it'll be a lot more. I like teaching people, so all my classes are me. I struggle with the video, like Udemy type of thing. I want to talk to people. I want to actually talk about your business. So I do a lot of one-on-ones. I have this new one-on-one that I do now called the Cuchifrito circuit. And basically what it is I hate people who do random acts of marketing. That's most people, right? You
Right.
see
It's
something, you take
irritating.
a picture of it,
Yeah.
you take a picture of it, and you just kind of incorporate it into your everyday feed. But it doesn't do anything for your revenue. It does nothing for your money. It does nothing for building your legacy. So what I try to do is I try to tell people to meet me at a cuchi frito spot. We'll have some cuchi fritos, but that's where we leave it. Everything else has to be geared towards healthy, sustainable social media feeds that are going to actually generate revenue. So that's
Right.
kind of where I go with that. And to give you an example, just this is something you're going to find crazy amazing. If you look at most of your favorite influencers that do fitness and healthy living type of social media, right? They
Mm-hmm.
figured it out, right? They figured out how to be healthy. They figured out how to be mindful. They figured out how to put the right things in their body. They know that it's a consistent, you know, it's a consistent work ethic that you need, that you have to be consistent, that you have to wake up every day with certain intentions to be able to get that body that they are showing off to you on Instagram. However, those same people do not exercise that same dynamic when they're doing their social media. They still want the quick pill. They want the diet pill. They want
Right.
the quick fix. They want to
Right.
buy followers. They want to do whatever. So think about that. You know, be that person. Like I teach my class, my coaching sessions are like a physical trainer. And it's funny because if you know me, if you see me over the last 5 years, you notice that I lost almost half my weight. I went from
So
362
great.
pounds to 220.
It's so
But
amazing.
I think that the better shape that you see me in, the better prepared I am to help you with your social media because I figured out that that same cadence applies to my physical, to my spiritual, and
Mm-hmm.
to my business. And
And
it's a
it
holistic approach. It's a holistic approach to what I do.
And it's so important because I remember when I was on the road a lot and I started gaining weight, not because I was just eating bad. I was like pretzels, pizza, whatever was at the airport, not really being mindful of that. And somebody in my audience who was like a health coach said to me, your body is your brand. You're representing yourself on stage. And if you are not the epitome of health, then it's hard to take anything that you say seriously. I was like, whoa, Frank. I was like, I better stop these carbs. So anyway, yeah, it's really important to take care of ourselves. I always say health is wealth because, there's so many illnesses that can be prevented. And as speakers, and on the road, it's, easier sometimes to get something fast, but you can get something fast and healthy, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So please, everyone,
So
connect with George. One of the things he said was that success leaves clues and you don't have to recreate the wheel. You could see what he's doing. You could take classes from him. He does coaching on social media. If anyone knows, and you actually do social media for the Latina Oprah, who I can't wait to have on my podcast. I
yeah,
had,
actually we signed her. We actually signed her this February at Hispanic or March,
oh,
April. Well, we signed her in February, but we announced it at Hispanic with Facebook.
and you
So
signed her
Nancy
to what?
Ruffin, I signed her to Sofrito Media Group, which is my umbrella uh, company. And basically, what we're doing with her is we're doing brand development with her. We're actually, we're working. We're doing what a PR firm would do, but on a social level, if that makes sense. We're developing the brand from within. We're creating better content. We're producing better events, and hopefully taking her to be on your big screen, or I mean, not your big screen, your silver screen, to get her on TV and to get her in more places as we go on. And so far, she's doing amazing. I mean,
Good.
we did a live event with Phil Robinson, who is the magic behind P Diddy.
Oh,
We had a really close conversation with him on stage, very intimate space, only like 150 people. And the amazing thing about this is that Phil doesn't talk to anybody. He's not on social media at all. The only time you'll ever see Phil, and the only reference that you'll ever get of him is when Bad Boy did the becoming the band or whatever that Diddy did.
mhm. Right.
You might see some cameos of him in the mix because he was forced to. But he's a very private person, but he shares so much great information. So if you get a chance, go to nancyruffin.com and check out that particular conversation, that video. It was amazing. It talks about how to be number two to be number one. So
L- Wow.
definitely something you want to check out.
Love it. You're an infinite amount of resources, and we're so grateful for that checklist. We'll be checking back with that. Stay tuned, my friends. And I want to thank you so much for coming early on the show, and thank all
Yes.
of you for listening, for being present, for taking notes, for allowing all of the wonderful, juicy information that George gave just to sink in, marinate on it, but take action. The whole point of the Be a Paid Now podcast is not just to listen and be a voyeur and see how other people are doing it. It's to inspire you and to have you take inspired action, to use the tools, to use the resources, to know that success leaves clues, that all of these people like you have learned from their challenges and mistakes, and that you can go forward faster and easier using the power of synergy. You know how I love synergy. So make sure, if you love this episode, to share it. Share it on your social media. Speaking of social media, on your Facebook, on your Twitter, on your Instagram. Do you still use Snapchat? Whatever you use, share it out there. And if you wouldn't mind giving us a 5-star review, I said it, sin vergüenza, no shame in my game. If you love this podcast, let people know, and you will be doing them a favor by helping them to be on purpose and to be paid to do what they love. And if you want to take this even further, my friends, there is the Be a Paid Speaker Now Academy. You can do the online course, you could do the mastermind course with a powerful group of 8 people where you're being coached by me, or do VIP days. You can go and find out more information at Be a Paid Speaker Now. Remember, you are a messenger for the message, and with the power of synergy, what? Anything is possible. Ciao. Thank you for tuning in to the Be a Paid Speaker Now podcast. If you love this show, feel free to share it with friends. I believe sharing is caring. And when you write us a great review, your karma points will be adding up. And I'd like to give you something. If you love the show, you can download a free copy of my latest webinar, How to Get Paid, 5 Steps to Be a Paid Speaker. You can download it at deborahderas.com, deborahderas.com/speak now. Remember, you are the messenger for the message, and with the power of synergy, anything is possible.